Those of us who've spent any amount of time fishing have run across situations like this before.
It's my right to fish here. Okay. I've been fishing 30 years. I'm a homeowner.
Oftentimes, these conflicts arise because of a lack of understanding by one party or the other of the rights of both the landowner and the fisherman. So in this video, we're going to discuss those rights to get some clarification around what the law really says about fishing in or around private shorelines. And at the end of the video, we're going to go over some tips that will help you avoid these types of confrontations.
Once you don't sound, you just head out, okay? Okay. Yep, no more fish. I'm scared away.
Before we analyze what landowners don't have a right to do, let's take a quick look at what they do have a right to do. Littoral rights are a landowner's claim to use of the body of water bordering their property, as well as the use of its shore area. Riparian rights are those rights and obligations awarded to landowners whose property is adjacent to or abutting a river or stream. Among other things, these rights are what give landowners the right to construct docks off of their property and anchor boats in the water near their shoreline. While these rights do give landowners special privileges, this doesn't exclude the right of the public to enjoy the water as well. Before we go on, please remember to hit that like button, ring that bell to be notified of our future videos, and consider subscribing to our channel. These things really help support the channel. Thanks. In 1926, a landowner from Toledo, Ohio, sued a fisherman for crossing onto his property within the confines of the Pine River in northern Michigan. The landowner asserted that because he owned the property on both sides of the river, he could block access through his portion. In a landmark decision, the Michigan Supreme Court affirmed the right of the fisherman to traverse the property within the river, stating, "Pine River is navigable. In its waters, the people have the common right of fishing. The plaintiff, though owner of the soil, has no greater fishing rights than any other citizen." They went on to say that, of course, in exercising this right, people cannot go upon the uplands of riparian owners in order to gain access to the water. If they do that, they are guilty of trespass. This is just one example of many decisions that have been handed down in both state and federal courts that make it clear that the public has the right to use navigable waterways. So what defines a navigable waterway? The judgment by the Michigan Supreme Court was based on a principle of rights that was derived from British common law and incorporated into U.S. federal law. The idea of this principle is that if commerce has been, is, or could be done using the waterway, then it is public, and the rights to use it for recreation, including fishing, are public rights. Because logging was one of the main forms of commerce for which these rivers were used during the early days of our country, the floating log test became a measuring stick for many states to determine which waterways were navigable. What this all boils down to is that if the waterway can be accessed through public property, the public has a right to continue using water that is navigable to and from this access point. With all of that said, it is well known that water levels fluctuate over time. So how do we know where the private landowner's shoreline stops and the public waters begin? The ordinary high water mark on non-tidal rivers is the line on the shore established by the fluctuations of water and indicated by physical characteristics such as a clear, natural line impressed on the bank, shelving, changes in the character of soil, destruction of terrestrial vegetation, the presence of litter and debris, or other appropriate means that consider the characteristics of the surrounding areas. The use of the term ordinary is intended to distinguish between fluctuations of the water due to the normal course of seasonal activity versus an unusual event like flooding, which would result in no permanent change of characteristics of the landscape. While in general, the public's right to access navigable waterways is very liberal, there are some exceptions to these rights. Some of the most common of these are what are known as regulated navigation areas. These areas are water areas within a defined boundary for which regulations for vessels navigating within the area have been established. There are two types of regulated navigation areas that impact fishermen. These are known as security zones and safety zones. A security zone is an area of water and or land designated for a certain time to protect vessels, harbors, ports, and waterfront facilities from sabotage, damage, or injury due to subversive acts, accidents, or other causes of a similar nature. An example of a security zone is the water that is closed to navigation outside of nuclear power plants. A safety zone is an area of water and or land designated for a certain time for safety or environmental purposes. Examples of safety zones include areas under bridges that have structural damage where there is concern of safety for the public, as well as areas underneath firework displays. Whether through a misunderstanding of the law or outright bullying, many landowners try to force fishermen away from their area of shoreline. This mindset is very similar to the mindset of someone who parks in multiple parking places in order to create a bigger buffer around their vehicle. While this behavior is certainly rude, interfering with rightful hunting and fishing activity is also illegal. So here are a couple of things you can do to help avoid these types of confrontations. So the first tip I have here is to just be respectful of other people's use of the water. Whenever I encounter landowners that are out on their docks or working on their boat, I'll avoid those areas and just move on around. There's sort of this unspoken rule of not getting too close to other people when they're enjoying their time on the water. The second tip I have here is I found that when I wear a camera, people are less likely to speak to me. In fact, a lot of people just walk the other way. They don't want to be on camera. They know a lot of folks nowadays tape their fishing for personal use, but also for public use. Even if you don't have the camera on, if you're able to wear something like a GoPro on a GoPro harness, just having that sometimes will deter people from saying something to you. And the final tip I'm going to give here is that if you know you're in the right and you're still being harassed or bullied by a landowner, the best advice that I can give is to stand your ground and don't just be intimidated and walk away. Because unchecked bad behavior just leads to more bad behavior.
You can call the cops. I'm not leaving now. I was going to leave nice before, but I'm not leaving now.
Thanks for watching. Hey, if you've got a great idea for a future video that you'd like to see on the Great Lakes Fishermen, please drop it in the comments below. I love doing these videos and just want to make sure that I'm covering the content that you're interested in.